Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi.
Happy Friday. It's so good to see your faces. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really excited about this conversation, this first briefing that we're doing. But let me, as Erica said, I want to thank Erica, who is amazing and has done a great job. And I know she works closely with many of you. But just to kind of start us off, as she mentioned, I'm going to have a topper. And then we will get going from there. So let me give you a little bit of. Okay, I was given a hold for a second. Okay, so I'm going to have a topper for all of you, and then after that, we'll get going. Okay, so first of all, happy National HBCU Week. So exciting. I want to welcome each of you to the White House virtually. And as Erica said, hopefully one day soon, once we get on the other side of COVID and this pandemic, we can have you all here in person. So historically, Black colleges and universities have always been engines of opportunity that play an important role in training for the future. This is why the president and the vice president have not only committed to building an administration that looks like America, but this administration has already committed more than $4 billion in support of HBCUs. On Friday, September 3rd, President signed a proclamation to acknowledge September 5 through the 11th of 2021 as a National HBCU Week. President Biden also signed an executive order establishing the White House Initiative on HBCUs. On Wednesday, President Biden named Tony Allen, president of Delaware State University, as chair of the president's board of advisors on HBCUs. We will be announcing more regarding the board in the upcoming weeks. Today, Vice President Harris, the first HBCU graduate to serve as Vice President of the United States, visited Hampton University, go Hampton, to our STEM education facilities and stressed the importance of science, technology, engineering, and math as fields of study at HBCUs. And as you may have seen on social media today, Vice President Harris, White House senior advisor Cedric Richmond joined their White House colleagues on the Navy steps to celebrate the historic number of HBCU graduates currently working right here at the White House on behalf of the American people. So that was exciting to see, and it's historical as well. I want to give a couple of shout outs here. Shout out to Bennett College, Bowie State University, Florida A&M University, Hampton University, which I already shouted out, Howard University, Morehouse College, North Carolina A&T. I see you guys reacting. Okay, A&T State University. Let me just start from the beginning. North Carolina A&T State University, so I get you all in there in one breath. Spelman College, Tougaloo College. I had to say that right because that's where my boy Trey, my really good friend Trey, is from, right here at the White House. Virginia State University, who are all well represented here, like I said, at the White House by staffers, including our very own Regional Communications Director, Rakia Dorsey, who you guys also know really well, and Public Engagement Senior Advisors, Michael Collins, Trey Baker, who I just mentioned, Vince Evans, and Carissa Smith. All of them are amazing, wonderful, brilliant folks that I get to work with every day. So as you can see, we are filled with HBCU pride here at the White House. On a personal note, my brother is a proud graduate of Delaware State University, Hornet. And so he is a very proud Hornet. And so I had to shout him out there. And we are all committed, as you can imagine, making sure that HBCUs have all the resources they need to continue producing our nation's leaders for generations to come. And with that, as we do in our briefings, I will kick it off to the floor, to the open floor to take questions. And the first question that I have here, or the first person with a question, is Morgan from Alcorn State University. Morgan, if you're there, please do ask your question.
Hello, everybody. My name is Morgan Bridgman from Alcorn State University. I'm currently a senior mass communication student. And my question is more of a personal question. It's, what is one quality of yours that you think has helped you get into the position you are now in your career?
Oh, that's such a great question. I think, you all are such an impressive group of folks. I was reading a little bit about some of you as you guys were RSVPing, and you guys know this probably more than I do at this point. When you're in college, you got to work so hard, right? Working hard and staying focused is so important. But I do want to tell just a little bit of a story. Before I came into the White House, I used to teach as an adjunct professor, and I taught young people just like you. And they would ask me all the time, how did you get to work in the White House? Because I worked in the Obama-Biden administration first, and I got lucky, and I'm working again in another administration, as you guys know, the Biden-Harris. And I would always say to them, follow your passion. Make sure you, whatever it is, follow your passion. And the reason I say that is I thought I was going to be a doctor because that's what my parents wanted me to do. There's nothing wrong with being a doctor. If you all going to want to, anyone out there wants to be a doctor, you should go and do that. But it wasn't for me. And so once I learned that it wasn't the thing that I wanted to do, I tried to follow my passion, and I did. And I ended up right where I am here today, talking to all of you. So that is something that I always tell young people is make sure you follow your passion. And I think, especially in our community, we are told, oh, well, you don't want to follow your passion. You don't know if you're going to be able to support yourself. You don't know if you're going to be able to really, it's not going to make you any money or whatever it is. And I would say, if you do follow your passion, everything else will come together. Everything else will come as it needs to. And so that is my advice to all of you. Thank you so much, Morgan, for your personal question. I was told by Erica to make this quick and brief so I can get to all your questions. So I'm going to go to the second person here, and Jaisha Smalls from Bennett College. Hopefully I said your first name right.
Jaisha.
Oh, man. So Jaisha, everybody screws up my name, so I apologize. Not that I should screw up yours, but I know how that feels. But give me your question. You got the second question.
Yes. So I read an article about the Biden administration suing the state of Texas due to the new abortion law. Is this true? And what is this process looking like? And how does the administration feel about the abortion law?
So let me first say that the Attorney General did make an announcement yesterday and about this particular law that you're talking about and what the Department of Justice is going to do moving forward. And I want to add, President Biden has been incredibly strong in the opposition of this new law that's been very clear. He has called it unconstitutional when it comes to the rights of women. Clearly, as you all know, he believes in women's rights, and he's going to do everything that he can within the power of the White House to make sure that we address this. On the day that this announcement, on the day that the Supreme Court upheld this law, he called on his Gender Policy Council, which is the first gender policy council that a president has ever put together to make sure to address this issue. He called on the Human Health Services Agency to also address this issue of abortion and making sure that women have the right. They're able to make decisions about their bodies for themselves and not have anyone involved in that decision. So this is something that the president totally is going to continue to fight for. He completely, like I said, has been very strong in opposing this law. I also want to add that the Vice President met with abortion and reproductive health providers and patients this week to discuss the impact of the Texas Senate Bill 8 and other restrictions on reproductive care. As I said, this administration believes this issue is a critical priority, is working on all possible approaches, this whole of government approach that I was just mentioning when it comes to defending women's rights in Texas. And any additional information on the Department of Justice and what the Attorney General announced yesterday, I would refer you to the DOJ. Okay, thank you so much for your question. I have another person here, Diorona Davis, and I know I just screwed up your name. I apologize. Howard University. Please, if you are there, please ask your question and tell me how to actually say your first name.
Hello, thank you. I am Dariana Davis.
Dariana. All right.
You're a journalism student at Howard University. And I know you all have the Ignite HBCU Excellence Act, but my question is, to what extent is there likely to be a grant specifically dedicated towards housing infrastructure at HBCUs, as many of them struggle to house students?
Absolutely. Thank you for your question. So our HBCUs have long been an uneven, as you all know, playing field financially as compared to many other post-secondary institutions. And that's something I know you guys know personally. The Biden-Harris administration has been committed to addressing racial disparities and inequalities from day one. That is something that the president has been very clear, even when he was running for president, as making sure that everything that he does, every policy that he's put forth has equity, really focuses on racial equity at the center of all of his policies. And so that's why the president signed a whole of government effort to advance racial equity and support for underserved communities on his first day in office. Agencies across the government are working to expand their partnership with and funding of HBCUs through grants and contracting, as well as other mechanism, which is also a key prong of the HBCU initiative. But the administration has already made key investments in HBCUs. For example, the American Rescue Plan has invested $2.97 billion to HBCUs, which is a plan that was historical in the efforts of making sure that we reached out to everyone and didn't leave anyone behind, and again had that equity at the center of it all. The Build Back Better plan, which is something that the president is working towards, his agenda would provide free community college to students at public community colleges, including 11 HBCUs. The president is proposing a nearly $1,500 increase in Pell Grant, a down payment on doubling Pell. According to UNCF, 70% of students at HBCUs are Pell eligible. So the Build Back Better plan, the agenda that he's working on right now with congressional members, this plan proposes historic investments in the RD infrastructure of HBCUs, TCUs, MSIUs. Also, I would like to note that the president's Build Back Better plan agenda calls for increasing Title III and Title V funds, which is so incredibly important as it relates to HBCUs. And one last thing, just to note, the Department of Ed discharged over $1 billion of HBCU debt for institution moving major capital improvements. For example, dormitories, which I'm sure many of you understand that very personally. So those are the things that the administration is working towards and has already done. And like I said, making HBCUs a priority and making sure that equity and dealing with racial equity is at the center of all of his plans that he has moved forward thus far in this first 7 months and will continue to do. Okay, the next person I have here is Nadia Johnson from Johnson C. Smith University. Nadia?
Ma'am, hi, my name is Nadia Johnson.
Hey.
I'm the current SGA president of Johnson C. Smith University and a senior studying communication arts. I have another personal question for you, Ms. Pierre. What is one of your key mental health strategies to cope with racial controversy in the workplace, especially as a Black woman working within the highest office of the land? I would love to know that.
Wow, Nadia, that is such an important question. And thank you so much for asking it, because it's so critical. As some people, in the past, especially when I was growing up, people didn't want to talk about mental health. It was taboo. You didn't talk about what was going on or want to talk about even if you were having issues and how do you move forward and asking for help. This is a mental health issue. Mental health is something that's incredibly important to me. And so I'm so glad that you asked about it. I've written about it. I've talked about it on a personal level for the past several years. And for me, I am lucky enough to have my own family. I have a little girl who is 7 years old. And so being with my family is so important, and watching her grow actually helps with like my stress, right? right? And anything that I'm going through the day, and understanding as well, everything that I do is going to help her down the line as herself being a young Black girl, and as one day she'll be a Black woman. Hopefully trying to do good things, and maybe even going to an HBCU, which would be exciting. And so that's actually really helps centers me. I'm sure many of you have your families who help center you and help build you back up when you need to be built back up. And also having something that I can do outside of everything else that's for me, having that peaceful, quiet time, being able to do a little bit of just like me time is so important as well. And I would add, and you all should do this, I really recommend this, is having a community around you that supports you, that lifts you up when you need it, when you feel down, and being able to talk to someone. Don't shy away from that. It is important to be able to talk to someone that you trust. So Nadia, thank you so much for the question. I know I don't want to talk too long because I've been told by Erica that I need to get this going. And so, okay, Kennedy Evans from Miles College, you are up next.
Hello, I'm Kennedy Evans. I'm a junior communications major. And my question for you is, one of the biggest things we face in America is social injustice. So what has the Biden-Harris administration done to implement and support racial justice and support social justice?
Yeah, that's another amazing, you guys' questions have been amazing. So, when the president walked into the White House, or even before he did that, he knew he had to deal with multiple crises. He talked about the COVID pandemic being a crisis, clearly, that we're all dealing with, which is why we're doing this virtually. Obviously, the economic crises, which is something that he walked in and had to deal with. And thankfully, those two things were moving forward. There's still work to be done, but we're certainly in a much better place than we were 8 months ago. And one of the crises that he talked about very powerfully and very openly is this racial equity, and dealing with racial inequality, and dealing with that in a real way to make sure that we're lifting up those conversations about what we can do better as a country, and also the history, our role as a country when it comes to racial inequities. And so on day one, and I mentioned this already, but the president signed an executive order establishing a whole of government approach to racial equity, basically making sure that when you look at the agencies, the federal agencies across the government, he wanted to make sure that we really dealt with racial equity in a real way at all of the agencies. And so I don't know, some of you have ever heard of Susan Rice. She's really amazing, former ambassador, UN ambassador, former national security advisor. She heads the Domestic Policy Council, and that is something that she has been charged with that particular executive order, making sure that we are dealing with racial equity at the government level, the federal government level in these agencies. He signed an executive order to protect voting rights and appointed Kristen Clark to lead the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. Kristen Clark, you should look her up if you don't know her. She has an amazing resume when it comes to civil rights and the work that she has done before coming into the government. He has also signed the American Rescue Plan, which I mentioned, a historic piece of legislation into law, which he did very early on in the spring, and works every day to advance his Build Back Better agenda to ensure socioeconomic equality in areas of housing, healthcare, and beyond for Black Americans is addressed, and we really truly deal with that in a way that we're lifting up our community. Okay, next is Jalen Brown, Morehouse College, Morehouse in the house.
Yes, ma'am, we're right here.
All right, I see you. You're in your dorm room?
Yes, I am actually.
Love it.
But so my question is pretty simple. What is the administration's plan for directly targeting HBCU student loan debt as opposed to the overall student debt problem? And what is the administration's plan to sustain the programs it's started to connect HBCU students with everyone else?
All right. Okay. Love this question because I think the administration has done, the Biden-Harris administration has done a lot to wipe away about $10 billion in student loan debt. That is what we've been able to do in this past several months. Some of the beneficiaries include permanently disabled people, students who have been defrauded by failed for-profit institutions, soldiers deployed to a war zone. The administration and the Department of Education are constantly looking for ways of easing the load of student debt as it relates directly to HBCU student loan debt. To your question, HBCUs have received close to $4 billion in funding from the Biden-Harris administration. Part of that funding has been used by institutions to cancel debt that students had on their accounts. In addition to the grants made directly to students, this guidance illustrates opportunities for institutions to use their own grants to reimburse themselves for lost revenue while supporting students during the pandemic. Also, there has been $1.6 billion in capital improvement loan forgiveness for HBCUs, which has helped to take care of the expense of new facilities on HBCU campuses and help the overall financial health of the institution. So this is, again, something that in the Biden-Harris administration is very important when it comes to student loan and making sure that we're helping students get through their college education. Okay, next. We have Jordan Brown, Morgan State University. Jordan, you're up.
Hi, thank you so much. It's great to be here. My question for you is more so about the Biden administration and with the recent reopening of schools and universities, many for the first time since the COVID-19 pandemic began. A lot of states across the country have different safety protocols against COVID, and with students in schools K through 8 haven't had the opportunity to get vaccinated yet. What procedures is the Biden administration taking to ensure everybody's safety at this time?
Jordan, thank you for that question because this one is personal to me. As I mentioned, I have a 7-year-old and she is not able to get vaccinated. As you all know, 11 and under, the vaccination is not yet available to them. It has not been approved by FDA. And as you know, we follow science here and lead with science. And so that is something that many parents I know across the country, some parents that I know personally, even here at the White House, are really concerned about that, about their kids going to school and the numbers that we're seeing with kids contacting or being infected with COVID. So we must do everything we can to protect kids. This is something that the president talked about yesterday when he laid out his next phase of combating COVID-19. We want to make sure that we get as many people vaccinated. We want to make sure that we keep people out of hospitals and make sure that we're protecting folks as much as possible and make sure we keep those schools open and make sure we keep our economy open. And so this is critical. Like my daughter and so many other kids were, and probably some of you hadn't been in school in person for a year and a half. And it is so important to have these schools open for your mental health. We were just talking about mental health, for your social kind of just interaction, and to really get an education that you can have access to your teacher and access to the things that are incredibly important. So the vaccine requirements in the president's plan will affect about 100 million Americans, and 2/3 of those Americans are all workers. The president is requiring vaccination where he can. The Head Start programs, Department of Defense schools, Bureau of Indian Education, and the president called on governors to require vaccination for all teachers and staff. So we know that schools can be safe if they follow the public health guidelines around mitigation strategies, masking, ventilation, all those things. The schools were given funding for through the American Rescue Plan because the president wanted to make sure when we open schools that they were opened safely. So all of these things that I just mentioned, ventilation, mitigation, PPE, that has there's been funding awarded to states to make sure that can be done. in a way that is safe. But I hear you all. It is incredibly important to keep our young people safe and to make sure that we do everything that we can, which is why the president spoke about this very forcefully yesterday about how to combat COVID-19 and his approach. Okay, I'm being given the sign here. 5 more minutes, I think, right? We have left. So Jamil Whitlow from North Carolina A&T State University.
Hi, I'm a senior multimedia journalism student, and my question for you is diverse issues in higher education reported that the Biden administration plans to propose $239 million in new funding for HBCUs, with $72 million allocated as discretionary funding. My question is twofolded. How will this money be allotted to over 100 HBCUs, and what impact does the administration want this funding to have on students?
Thank you so much for your question. So similar to other education funding, colleges and universities will receive based on a formula that will consider the number of students enrolled with weighted consideration for students receiving Pell Grants. So that's number one. It's expected that this will impact HBCUs and students there by giving institution an additional boost for operations cost, which students will see in services and offerings they receive. So thank you so much for your question, because it's incredibly important to talk about that as well. Oh, okay, is that what you want me to? Okay, great. Okay. All right, the next person I have is George Francis, University of the Virgin Islands. I'd love to be in the Virgin Islands right now.
Yes, hello.
Hey, George, good to see you. I'm trying to see where you are. Oh, hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? Good to see you as well. My question is a little bit personal question regarding your book moving forward. Oh. So my mass media studies course at UVI has begun reading a book entitled Diversity Matters in the 21st Century, which includes an excerpt from your book where you discuss the Black Lives Matter movement and the Anglophone African Caribbean impact. Could you expand a little bit more on your thoughts on topics such as mental illness, depression, and suicide, and how these things must be acknowledged as serious social ills in communities of color and become part of the larger dialogue in mainstream society?
Wow, I did not know this. Diversity matters. Oh, okay. I had no idea. That's good to know that I'm included in that. So the administration takes these, as you can imagine, these issues very seriously. In fact, just yesterday, President Biden signed a proclamation on suicide prevention. While there is no one cause of suicide, we know there are many factors that increase a person's risk for suicide, including the loss of a job, right? Serious illness and financial, criminal, legal, and relationship problems. He proposed $180 billion to fund suicide prevention programs at the Department of Health and Human Services, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. His dedication, this dedicated funding will support programming that focuses on suicide prevention at every age and stage of a person's life, as well as prevention and intervention programs through health systems. Additionally, he signed the American Rescue Plan, which I've talked about a couple of times here this afternoon, into law, knowing that our nation's youth has been especially vulnerable to the mental health impacts of COVID-19 pandemic. The American Rescue Plan includes $20 million in funding, specifically for youth suicide prevention. I'm going to take just a personal point of privilege. As we talked about, mental health issues are so, it's just important that we just take care of ourselves, right? It's important that we ask for help if we need it. And this past year has been so tough and so difficult for so many people who have not been able to go to school, who have not been able to go to work because of COVID-19 and the pandemic. I know I have dealt with issues like this, And thank goodness I now have people that I can talk to. I am able to, deal with it in a way that is helpful to me. And so I just wanted to, this question is, it's a good question. Thank you for asking it, George, but I didn't want to let that go without saying that we have to make sure we take care of ourselves and take care of each other. And it's so incredibly important. These are tough times. These are incredibly tough times for our community, for you all who are in school and just trying to get through it, right? Trying to either graduate, trying to get through your first year, trying to get through the middle, your sophomore, junior year. And so if there's anything that you all going through or someone is, make sure you just get some help. It's so incredibly important. Okay. I have here, Malik Watkins, Norfolk State University. I'm just so focused on your first name. I think I screwed that up as well. Malik, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. You did good. It's Malik.
Yay! Okay, all right. I was feeling self-conscious about you saying the name because it's spelled differently than what I normally see it. So I just want to make sure I said that right. Okay, what is your question, sir?
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm a senior here at Norfolk State University, located in Norfolk, Virginia. My question is, we see that President Biden has committed to eliminate student debt past 10K plus interest. And we wanted to know, has President Biden considered eliminating that specifically for HBCUs? As you stated earlier in the call, over 70% of HBCU students are Pell Grant eligible, and HBCUs produce over 20% of African-American graduates. And these students would really benefit from having their debt forgiven.
Thank you so much, Malik. So as you know, and we've pretty much reiterated this throughout this our conversation, the president knows the vital role that HBCUs play in the future of America. Having HBCUs functioning and being able for students to have what they need is so important in the future of our country. That's just a fact, and he understands that. HBCUs are proven means of advancement for people of all ethnic, racial, and economic backgrounds, especially Black Americans. As you all know, I don't really need to say that to all of you, but HBCUs produce nearly 20% of all Black college graduates, 20%, and 25% of Black graduates who earn degrees in disciplines of science, technology, engineering, and math. That is so important. That is the future, right? That is the future of America. Just last month, President Biden invited Dr. Wayne Frederick, president of Howard University, to a virtual meeting with CEOs and community leaders for a discussion on vaccine requirements for students and employees around the country. Also in August, the president invited Dr. Carmen Walters, president of Tougaloo College. Yay, Trey. Trey's in the room, so. Tougaloo College, to the White House for a meeting with education and private sector leaders to discuss how the nation can collectively together improve cybersecurity, which is something that is a forefront and important issue that we need to deal with. He considers it a top priority to continue this engagement to ensure we are working very closely with HBCUs and ensure a bright future for all HBCU students. So this is a priority, hence the HBCU week and having the events that we have done, this conversation that we have all done, are having today, the vice president going to Hampton today as well. So this is something that is so important to the president and this administration, and we'll continue to focus on that. We are going to, I'm being given the signal by Erica. We're gonna take a selfie. Oh, okay. All right. I see everybody looks so good here. All right. Oh, are you guys ready? Okay. All right. You guys have been amazing and wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me today. We'll have more of these. Your questions were amazing and so important. I hope I did a good job answering them. And you all know Erica and Rakia. Continue talking to them, and we will do everything that we can, to make sure that we continue to keep HBCUs a priority. As you know, this is something that the president and the vice president take very personally. So thank you so much. Have a great, great afternoon and have a great weekend. Be safe out there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.